everyone. Welcome to EP.7 of This Old Doghouse Logistics Podcast. I am Jeff Dickinson alongside my co-host, John Brewer. How you doing, John?
I'm doing good, Jeff. How are you?
Good, man. How was your week?
It wasn't too bad. Got some projects going on and just kind of wading through the mud on those. But other than that, it's okay.
Yeah, it's Friday the 13th. You scared?
A little bit.
Just don't walk under any ladders, and make sure there's no black cats around, right?
No black cats. Well, no black cats in the house for sure, because the only thing I've got is dogs. So
yeah, I do too. We used to have a couple cats, but they passed. So my dog is like 16 years old, and every day is a blessing with him, man. I know you love dogs, so
absolutely.
So you know what? We're getting into that season, John, and it's very pertinent to the industry where, we're talking about RFP season. You and I spoke about that in the beginning of the week. It's so prevalent right now, and all the shippers, most of them, I would say, are starting to get those wheels turning and everything to get their budgets and forecasts in place by the beginning of the year. So let's chat a little bit about that. Why don't you start off?
Sure. So, I was thinking about this subject pretty heavily, and kind of looking back over my career and some of the things that I was able to accomplish. RFPs have a place in the industry, but they don't necessarily need to be your number one go-to to reduce waste out of your system.
Right.
You need to be able to think outside the box. You need to be able to pull things off that'll help reduce the waste without having to constantly be in an RFP season. And
Right.
To be honest, your brokers and carriers will get wise to that too. If you're bidding out 3-4 times a year, they're going to probably be less likely to partner with you because you do bid out 2-3 times a year. So, they're looking for long-term relationships just like we are. They're looking for, long-term revenue streams where they can build their backhauls and have a circuitous route. So, just going to jump right into it, Jeff. One of the things in my previous life, I worked for a small parcel consolidator, and we actually used the USPS as our delivery method. And so what we would do is what we call zone skipping. And This works for FedEx. This works for UPS. Basically, if you have enough packages going to a regional area and you have a distribution point there, be it a post office, be it a FedEx hub, a UPS hub, doesn't matter, and you fill up a truckload of those things and you ship it out there to them. So you're not dispatching the small parcel part of it at the origin, which may be, for me, it was Memphis, Tennessee. You're actually originating it from closer to the delivery point. And these carriers, these small parcel carriers, will actually give you a discount for doing so. You can see it on their website. It'll also cut down on your transit time as well, so your packages get to your customers a lot quicker.
Yes.
And the caveat on this particular action is you will need to weigh the cost of the line haul to get it to the other zone versus the reduction in paying for basically the final mile delivery. Right. And if it works out mathematically, then it's going to make sense. Another side benefit of this process is your damages go down. They're not going through the small parcel carrier system and getting banged and bumped and dropped and everything else. They're staying all on a truckload until they get to their final delivery destination.
Absolutely.
So that's one area. Another area, and this is something you and I talked about earlier in the week, is what I call mode reduction.
Mm-hmm. And
mode reduction is where you take, it could be going from LTL to truckload. It could be going from truckload to intermodal. It just goes, if it doesn't have to be fast, it can be cheap, but you're not going to get cheap and fast. So,
no.
So what you would do, the thing you have to watch for that is, the company I worked for previously, we started shipping back when I think we had a bad hurricane year or something, and FEMA sucked up a bunch of trucks, a bunch of capacity out of the industry. and we were scrambling trying to find sustainable capacity. So we looked towards intermodal versus over the road, and we were actually delivering to the Walmarts and the Costco's and the Sam's
Right.
of the world. So you have those MABDs that you've got to be mindful of because there's some stiff penalties if you miss them. So what we did is I had a DC in Chicago, one of the burbs in Chicago, and we looked at it and we figured out what the difference in transit was for over the road versus intermodal, and we backed that up at the DC so that the shipment actually left the DC a day or two earlier, and it still made the MABD. Now that there's a back benefit to that, because what would happen, the way Walmart had their MABD structured, Friday was a hell day because you had to ship 45 truckloads or whatever the magic number was, and then Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays were almost dead.
Yep.
So it made a labor situation at the distribution center that was not balanced.
No.
When we backed it up and we stopped shipping so much on Friday, we lightened the load on Friday.
Yep.
And we bumped up the loads on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which provided a more balanced week for the distributor, and they were able to plan their labor better. So there was a side benefit to that. Also, we saw obviously a reduction in line haul cost.
Yep.
So we were able to pick that up, and we basically migrated that whole process across our entire network. We were already doing 6,000 cans a year in a modal for our inter DC shipments from our plants. So we just started doing direct customer direct shipments and started adding to them, and it really was very successful. Plus, we had a sustainable capacity because in any given metropolitan area, you have a ton of intermodal drivers who are picking stuff up and taking it to the rail, getting it on the rail, and it goes, and then you have it at the back end. So we had plenty of power to move the product. We reduced our cost. We balanced our DC labor week, and that of course made them extremely happy. So, and we were able to do that. One of the caveats you do need to watch out on that is making sure you bake in enough transit time to get that to happen. Now, another thing we looked at, and I remember this one early in my career, was using hub and spokes. And that operates very similar to the zone skipping principle, but you're moving bigger shipments. This is really more palletized freight, where we would go. We delivered direct mail to the USPS. This is another company. I did a lot of postal freight during my career, unfortunately. So what we would do is we would hit like 36 post offices in the St. Louis metro market. So we would load up the trucks, and we actually partnered with a break bulk, cross dock facility. And their job, what they were doing during the week was they were distributing to a bunch of Kmart's.
Right.
So we, basically that vetted them for us, because you don't mess with Kmart just like you don't mess with Walmart. And if you keep the business, that you must be doing a pretty decent job. So what we would do is Friday night, we'd ship 5 to 6 truckloads up there to the DC. They would cross dock them, put them on route trucks, and then they would deliver them. And usually they had them all off by before noon on Saturday. They were sitting back drinking beer around noon on Saturday. So that's something else you can do. And the post office actually cut us some slack on the postage, because again, you're doing the line haul for them. They don't have to waste labor. They don't have to waste time. They don't have to waste cost. And they're going to cut you a little slack on the labor piece. You just got to, again, measure, the cost of doing the hub and spoke versus the reduction in postage. And if it mathematically makes sense, then you do it.
Right.
Another thing you can do from an inbound perspective is, instead of shipping, say you have 3 LTL size shipments in a certain geography, really kind of close to each other. And if your suppliers are shipping them LTL into you, that's obviously a higher cost.
Right.
But you can get a truck to do a 3 pick 1 drop and use a line haul carrier. And again, you have those same benefits. You have reduced cost, you have improved transit, and reduced damages.
Yes.
So, but you still need to weigh everything. You need to take a mathematical approach to and compare. The other thing you and I know we talked about was inventory carrying costs versus doing one of these options, especially a mode reduction.
Right.
If your DCs have to carry an extra day or two of inventory, is it worth it to take do the logistical savings? Are they better than your increased inventory carrying costs? Because if they're not, you're just kind of spinning your wheels.
Correct.
So there's just a small snippet of some of the thinking outside the box things that we did, and we never went to RFP on that. And we were able to reduce waste out of our system. We were able to maintain our carrier and broker relationships because we weren't constantly bidding the freight out from under them.
Right.
And we improved our transit times and service to our customers. So there's a lot of wins on the table for those things. And if it makes, like I said, mathematical sense and logistical sense, then you should at least try to pursue that and ask that question, why can't we do this?
Yeah, this is so much up my alley. And when you were talking about zone skipping, and I'll go back in the day. This was in the late 1980s, and I was working with the AS400. That was pretty much our
green screen.
Yeah, green screen, and then at the end of the day, you literally have to go into a black room and shut your eyes. And when you shut your eyes, you still saw those green matrix, a dark matrix sitting there, and it's just like I couldn't take it, And I was there for like 9 years at Onkyo USA, and so what we did, and it's interesting that you said about zone skipping and optimization of not just parcel but LTL shipments as well. And so I figured out a way to integrate into the AS400 that would generate a master pull list for all parcel shipments, as well as tag it to LTL shipments. Because what would happen, and what we found out, was that in the morning, a customer would put in an LTL shipment, and several hours later, they would put in a parcel shipment. So instead of shipping one LTL shipment and a box, we consolidated it.
Right.
And I started a zone. I'm pretty sure I was one of the first at that time, where I teamed up with a company who was one of the best at the time, called Coretta Load to Ride, out of Paramus, New Jersey. And we figured out a way to take out the stops, as you said earlier, less handling, less damage,
Right.
quicker transit times. And we used them. We put a system together that created a label that said, I have it someplace. It's 30 something years old. And it was a little yellow and red sticker that said zone skip with a backslash in it. It had black, and it had a tracking number on it. And we put that in the bill of lading, put that on the pallet that was optimized with both parcel, whatever. And instead of going through the whole maze of the system that a normal LTL would do, especially going cross country, we would build the trucks, which the reason was called Coretta Load to Ride, because that's what it did. You loaded it and it rode all the way to its final destination for the final mile delivery, which cut down all of that. And the savings were immense. However, I can't get into the loss side of it, but let's just say it worked and someone didn't like it. That's all I'll say. So, yeah, that was a really good thing that we did, and great point on your side. But also, when you're talking about the traditional milk run, the hub and spoke operation, And when I was at Ford Motor Company at that time, they had a big umbrella, and Ford, what they had Jaguar, Austin Martin, Land Rover, Volvo, Lincoln Mercury, had all those things. And then what happened was two ships in the middle of the night, they would keep passing each other. So long story short, we created these routes, dedicated milk runs that I literally had to go and find domiciles and pay diners like $500 a month to park a pup that had a lift gate on that. And then also create cross docks all throughout the country. We had at the time 9 very large PDCs that we broke down and created 18 high velocity centers. And so the high velocity centers were parts that were less than 48 inches long. We had to deal with the extended length materials such as rocker panels, quarter panels, head guards, hoods, you name it, trunks. They were big pieces, so we had to blend them. So we had to create a cross dock that took the less than 48-inch material from the high velocity center to a cross dock and blend that with the larger shipments that were coming in from Romulus, Michigan, whether they were by rail or inbound line haul to the cross dock, where we created the loads that consisted of a stop at a Lincoln Mercury, a Volvo, a Mazda, a Jaguar, the whole scheme. There were seven companies that were under the Ford umbrella, and so we did that milk run, and it was very interesting because you talked it about highs and lows. Like Fridays was a bomb, the rest of the week was. So what went on these trucks after we had rolling cages, and then the extended length material was all labeled and then put on top of the cages, built into each truck. We were running 48 dedicated lanes every single day of the week, like thousands of customers that were in there, because each one of them had like anywhere between 24 to 30 stops on it. And what was interesting is that the cost reduction was unbelievable because we had blended rate per mile blended for the stop, for the lift gate, the accessorials, and all of that. And then we balanced out the week because some had, they call them VORs, vehicle off the road. They had interim shipments, which we called LTL, and then stock orders, which were the big orders that went in there. And so we had to break that down and balance it out throughout the whole week. So you talk about labor, you talk about the UAW, the labor force there. Well, I don't even want to get into that. And having them in the right place at the right time to load those trucks. And then we're talking thousands of pieces. All my carriers that came in and did business with me, I insisted that they brought in their own scanning machines, put them on the dock, because I was a strict enforcer of accountability, and also to prove that they did have that on the truck. So thousands of pieces, each and every single one was scanned into each truck and identified. And it saved them millions and millions of dollars, just millions and millions of dollars. So to your point again, and I agree wholeheartedly that it's one thing to move freight. It's another thing to really look at the operation and understand where the deficiencies are and where you can make it a lot more efficient than what it really is, because they're so used to doing the same damn thing that they don't really understand that there's other opportunities.
That's right.
I call the hidden bank opportunities, which are the real found dollars that can be brought back to the customer's bottom line. They had it there, they didn't know it was there, and it was found, and now their profits, right, and revenue increased, and their
Right.
cost. And the same with your point about carrier reduction and stuff like that. When I was with Panasonic, we had probably 15 carriers or something like that. And so I was thinking, I was like, more revenue, bigger discounts, because you're taking, I mean, a very large multi-million-dollar operation, and you were taking that transportation spend and you were dividing it up amongst 15 carriers that went to everywhere across the country, and I'm talking, when I talk carriers, you're talking intermodal, you're talking air, you're talking OTR, you name it, it was on it, it moved. So I reduced that and had them come back in. You were talking about the non-necessity for RFPs, and then there's a necessity for RFPs.
Right.
And so I squished it down to 8. So instead of dividing up the revenue amongst 15 carriers, I divided it up and scaled it and ramped it up to only 8, and I ramped up their revenue. But there was an incentive behind that. If I give you X, I want Y.
Right.
Here are the requirements. Here are the expectations as far as on-time delivery, performance, and all of that. If you want me to give you several more $1 million each, this is what you're going to give me. And I always say this, and I laugh about it when, working in a complex logistics operation, I had no stress. And the reason why is that I gave equal opportunity to both brokers, service providers, whomever they may be, asset-based carriers, the opportunity to fire themselves.
Right.
I didn't fire anybody because I was very deliberate in what my requirements were and what my expectations. And of course, those KPIs came into play.
Absolutely.
We talked about that a long time ago. You talked about net and gross, right? Acceptable, exceptions, and all of that to the rule, where some things would be acceptable and others would totally not be acceptable.
That's right.
And instead of them always raking you over the coals, well, it was your turn to return the favor.
Yeah.
So there's a whole program in that philosophy about RFPs, and especially nowadays, John, where the market is so volatile and nobody really knows where it goes. You can't do these long-term RFPs at all. At least for me, I won't do them. And there's a few reasons why. The methodology behind that is that, one, I don't want to lose money. 2, I don't want my shipper to lose money. All right. We're in it together. We're looking at long-term business relationships. So how are we going to attack this as a partnership to get us through this trying time? Right. So I would say, you know what, Jeff, can you lock him in? That's tough, because what happens if it swings? It could go like that. Nobody knows it. Nobody can determine when and where it's going to happen, but it could. Now you talk, as an example, what if scenarios? What about the pork strike that's going to happen in the Gulf and the East Coast? And how is that going to affect the supply chain, and what kind of impact is going to happen? How many people actually looked at that? What's your fallback? What's your option B? Did you look at the what ifs? That's what's lacking in the industry. And a lot of service providers, they don't have that proactive mindset that helps them to resolve the issue before it becomes an
issue. Right. Absolutely.
Right. Because if you have that reactive mindset, you miss the boat. You're going to lose a lot of money, and your customer is going to pay a huge price about that.
Right.
So, a lot of people think it's stupid and stuff like that. Well, you and I both know that the industry is unpredictable, but the high probability of something going wrong is like 1,000%.
Absolutely.
You don't know when it's going to happen. You're going to get blindsided in the logistics industry. And how do you prepare for that? And how do you know it's going to happen? Well, it's a gut feeling. We've gone.
Yes, it is. It is.
No, you and I have gone through it. We understand that. What are we going to do to prevent that from happening? Or if it happens, how are you going to minimize the damage?
That's right. That's right. A couple points there, Jeff. When you were mentioning reducing your carrier pool, another added benefit of that is sustainable capacity because
Yeah.
you've given them a bigger carrot. They know what your requirements are. They're not going to walk away from it as fast as if you give them like one load a month. So that's an additional side benefit. They're going to be basically you're buying their loyalty, and
Yes.
they're gonna you're a bigger fish in their pond. You're not just you may not be the 800-pound gorilla, but you're not the mom and pop shipping it once a month either. So that kind of differentiates you in that market. And the other piece of it is you mentioned gut feel, and I kind of chuckle because you're exactly right. It's like between the two of us, we probably know 10,000 ways something's going to go wrong,
Oh,
and it's just a matter of what way is coming.
right.
But that you can kind of stick that in the back of your mind as you build on your experience in this industry, and you start to see things that look very similar to something else,
Exactly.
and you know exactly you know how it kicked your butt, and you know what you did to fix it. And
Right.
so when you get to the next one, obviously you don't want to get your butt kicked again. So you go ahead and implement the solution ahead of time, and you head it off at the pass.
But you want to
And
minimize the pain.
yeah,
It may not be exact. It may not be exact what happened, but it's extremely similar, and you need to reduce the pain in the ass. You really need.
exactly. I mean, this is a painful industry. I mean, if you don't have Kevlar skin, I would highly recommend you go find something that's a little bit easier to do. But yeah, you learn to second guess things, and then also come up with multiple plans of action in case your first one doesn't work. I always tell people some of the projects I've done, I've gotten all the way out to Plan Q. We Plan A lasted about 2 minutes. Excuse me.
I'm at QQ.
QQ. So it's you just pick up on that, and that kind of resonated with me when you mentioned it because I was like, yeah, it's kind of a pessimistic look, but you're being proactive. So I would take pessimism and proactivity over anything in the world.
Oh, you're
And
right, John. You have to. I don't care who you are out there, and I guess it comes with experience and knowledge and understanding and what we've learned over the years. But if you don't create a proactive mindset and you're doing things reactively, you're going to be in big trouble. You got to learn something new every single day. You've got to gain that knowledge. You don't have to be an expert in any part of the supply chain from cradle to the grave, but you need to know a little bit about a lot of things, because if you just have that tunnel vision and get focused in that one little bucket, you're going to get pigeonholed and you're going to die there. You're going to freaking die there because the logistics industry is multifaceted, multimodal, right? Multi niche, multi verticals. I mean, it is just multi.
right.
And the more you know, the better off you are.
I tell everybody I talk to, logistics touches everything, and everything touches logistics. And
Yeah, everything we have is logistics.
You're exactly right on that.
Everything. Everything. It's like one of the questions that I have, and I just did this last week on Friday, is that I'm with my buddies. We're at a bar, and I always like busting their chops. And so I had a glass of beer, and I said to him, and one of my friends is a wise ass, right? I said, how did this beer get to you? He goes, well, the bartender just went over and he did the tap and he poured it in the. No, dude.
No.
No. That's a non-logistical mindset that doesn't understand that. They just see emotions. There's three motions. Bartender picks up a glass, goes to the tap, pours it, and hands it to you. Three things. Do you know how many multiple times, thousands of freaking things go into that to get that beer in front of you so you can drink it? And I always think that way. It's just like,
Right.
what happened if this happened? You
Well,
know?
if you're on the shipper side of the house, you've got to think like that, Jeff. And I'll tell you why. Because if everybody in within the four walls of the shipper is operating in silos, I may do something in logistics that saves the company a ton of money, but over in operations, it costs a ton of money, and it may cost more. So when you're having these cross-functional teams on these cross-functional projects, you've got to, even though I'm not in operations, I've got to think like an operation person, and I've got to dovetail those guardrails or those constraints into the overall end product. So in other words, the logistics piece works, the operations piece works, the inventory piece works, marketing's happy because you're getting it to the customers on time and intact. The whole 9 yards, everything plays a role in that. And if you're to your point, if you're using tunnel vision and you're not thinking about that, you're not thinking, okay, what is this going to do to operations? Or what is this going to do to our, like I said earlier, our inventory carrying cost? Or what is this going to do to our end customer? And if you don't think like that, and you may not be an expert in any of those fields outside of your own,
Right.
but you've got to have that number one, to your point, and you mentioned this just about every episode and every time I talk to you, number one, you got to be inquisitive.
Yes.
You got to be curious.
Yes.
And you got to listen with intent. And you go and I'll go to somebody, I may not know anything about what they're doing or how they're doing it, but it's impacting my part of the company. I'm going to ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to ask questions until I have an understanding of maybe a high level understanding, but an understanding nonetheless of what they do and what happened, what's the results.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to bake that into my solution.
Right. I have a great segue, John. Great segue. What you're saying about operations, and we're talking about RFPs. So you want to avoid an RFP? Here's the way to do it, and get the best benefit out of it. One, create a roundtable.
That's right.
You, as the shipper, your carrier comes in. Sales and operations come in. Sales side of the operation, sales side and ops. You sit at the table, right? Listen, we're coming into a new year. Now the operations are saying, hey, what are they bringing new into it? Sales, hey, what, and sales meaning procurement as well. What new items are you buying? How is that going to affect? How is that going to affect freight volumes? Where are those volumes going to be? Where is that inventory going to be kept? What about transfers? Does that mean our transfers from Oshkosh, Michigan to Parsippany, New Jersey is going to increase by X fold, whatever? Now you got your carriers in there. Your carriers are now at the oak table involved with the discussions. That means that they are important to you and you are important to them.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
Now you're not talking about rates. It's irrelevant. You're not talking about accessorials. It's irrelevant. These are your incumbent carriers. You already have a personal relationship. Hopefully it's a long one and they've been with you and you know how they operate and they know how you operate. All right. Now you go into transparency and honesty and integrity and you sit down with them and go, listen, I brought everybody in here. I don't want you to answer this, but we're looking for a 3% reduction. Right? We're not talking about rates. We're just talking about moving forward and the reasons why and the justification behind it. Okay? Right. Because that honesty, that integrity, and that transparency is going to be worth not gold, but platinum. Okay? Right. And of course, does revenue in transportation, I mean, if you're running $100 million worth of operations, in transportation spend, you have a lot of leverage and you have a lot of people that are at that table that want a little piece of that pie and they want sustainability, right? And you mentioned about before, and I have to throw it in, it's about feeding your carriers through the good and bad times. Always feed them.
Yep.
Don't cut them off by by the neck and let them walk around like a chicken with his head cut off. Keep them motivated, right?
Yep. 100%.
Break it away from somebody else, but equal the revenue, the justification. You want that pool to exist, because when the market changes, you're going to have to respond quickly and be able to scale and ramp up like that.
Exactly.
If you get rid of those carriers that are in your pool, it tells them, it gives them a really bad sign. They aren't important to you. You're going cheap. They're not cheap. And then when the market changes and you go back to them and going, hey, John, listen, I really didn't want to let you go. It came down from above. The sea level were talking to me, and I had no choice in it. That person, that carrier, if I was him, I'll tell you to go F yourself. Oh, sure. You weren't there for me, but now you're in a bind and you want me to come and help you get out of it. Yeah. Take a hike, dude. I mean, that's the way I operate. So that's where you're talking about what if scenarios and all this other kind of stuff, man. You got to get that mindset of how to help the ones who help you and move your industry, whatever industry that you're in. You take care of those damn guys.
Absolutely.
That's where everything lies. When they stop, you suffer. You got a lot of pain. And now you got to reinvent the wheel to try to construct what you already had, but you gave up. I mean, it cost a tremendous amount of money.
Yep, absolutely. And it goes right back to that minimizing pain mantra. You want to feel some pain, you cut some carriers and then find out you need them, because you're going to get it from both ends. You're going to get it from the carrier and the broker, because they're going to say, to your point, F you. And you're also going to get it from your customers, internal and external, because your service is going through the floor.
Right. And plus, let's just say you're going to do a full blown out RFP, right? We were talking how to avoid RFPs, but let's just say you're now going to go and you're going to do a full blown out RFP. Now, the most simplest ways that most brokers do it, okay, and a lot of service providers, is that they'll get a list of lanes and they'll get a mass blast for emails and they'll send it out to a lot of carriers. Maybe they've got a pool of carriers and they'll send in their lanes, and they won't really give a lot of details. It's just point A to point B, give us your best shot. Now, this is my differentiator, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. But when you're looking at RFPs, it's not just that shipper that you're talking about. You're talking about their suppliers, the manufacturers, the distributors on the upside of it. And then on the downside, you're looking at wholesalers, retailers, and customers, right? You got to get that into your head, because they're all relevant to the RFPs, okay? First thing is facility profiles. You talk about the engagement with your carriers and getting them on board and getting them to know that you're real, you're meaningful, and what you say and do is etched in stone. You're an ethical service provider. What I do, and I showed it to you earlier, and a lot of people are going to say, shit, that's a lot of work, man. You want results, you got to put in the work.
That's right.
To benefit from that. So I'm going to share a screen, what my typical RFP was, and people won't believe it, but I kept it because I knew it was going to come in handy years later, and I also developed my own for my own business. So let me just share this. All right, so this is when I was managing a very large multi-million-dollar transportation complex operation, I should say. This was the RFP that I created. So you got your cover sheet, tells who it was. It was for Panasonic of North America. Now it starts getting into the real details. the summary and background of the company that you're representing so that they know what kind of business that they're going to be hauling or working for and the types of products and all this. The proposal guidelines, what is it? What's the requirements? All of that, right? What are the carrier qualifications that I'm looking for that they have to meet or exceed? The contract agreement, the pricing, the capacity, right? The Panasonic regulatory compliance, the service compliance. We're getting into the meat and potatoes here, guys. I mean, if you want an RFP and you want to do it right and you want to build strong long-term business relationships, this is the way that you do it. And then you also add your own accessorial page, your own FSC schedule, just like you see all here. This is long. This is detailed. I am a detailed person. I get under the weeds, and I know that's our differentiator at RGTX. All right. We just don't do surface shit. We go where other people don't.
Hey, Jeff, if I can jump in before you get away from accessorials and fuel table, by designating your own accessorials and fuel table, you obviously are going to control those costs, or you're going to have a control mechanism in those costs. But when you start comparing your bids as they come in,
right,
they will be apples to apples because everybody's using the same fuel scale, even right down to the mileage software.
Correct.
PC Miler version X. And you make sure that they do that. If you're bidding your LTL, you call out a specific tariff that you want them to bid off of, because somebody may give you a 75% discount on 2024 tariff, and somebody may give you a 30% discount on 2020 tariff, and the 30% discount is cheaper than the 75% discount.
Right. Well, if you're using like a ZAR Light 2018, 2020, or you're using an old yellow 500G tariff or whatever, I mean, it's all relative. But you also have to remember, John, because carriers out there, they have their own fuel schedule, and then their prices are based off of their fuel schedule. So if you use your fuel schedule and your accessorials, they're going to adjust their pricing according to your schedule. Exactly. So that's where the apples to apples comes from. But also on the backside, on the operational side, right? When you're looking, and let's say you're working very complex logistics operation, and you've got all these multiple individual fuel schedules and accessorial pages that were given to you by the carriers. Imagine on the freight bill audit side of the business and how much more time they're going to spend. Again, this is the type of things that RGTX does in order to find hidden bank opportunities that bring newly found dollars back to the bottom line, where you're reducing SG&A costs. That's the overhead. That's the labor intensive. That's what keeps the lights on. That's all that kind of stuff. Because the longer they're in the office doing their job, the longer the lights are on, and overtime money and all of this. You want to simplify that. Exactly. So, there's so many different things that you can do operationally to save your customers and prospects, especially when you're talking to them and you're trying to cut a deal. And where's your differentiator? What can you do for us? And that's why it's more important to know a lot more things than just freight. So
100% on that.
Yeah. So now you get into the request for proposal and the timelines. And then, hello, thank you very much, Jeff Dickinson, whatever. But this is what, five pages long, an RFP that's 5 pages long. You don't even want to see my transportation contract agreement. That's 19 pages. That's when I was working for a shipper and working with lawyers and all this kind of stuff, because I know a lot about that kind of stuff. But also now, let's say that you are finished with your RFP, you've made your decisions. In order to build ongoing carrier relationships, there's another step that needs to be done. And that's called a loser letter and a winner letter. either to a new carrier that proposed rates for the lanes or an incumbent carrier that's already been doing business with that wasn't able to hit the pricing that you were looking for. So let me just bring this up so everybody gets an understanding of what this looks like. Let's see here. Just bear with me. Hopefully I can get out of this. I'm trying to get out of this thing. What was that?
Dogs must have found a rabbit in the backyard.
Oh man. Let's see here. Let me see if I can do it this way. Oh, nope. Oh, here we go. Boom. Sorry about that. All right, let me just do this one other thing here. Sorry for the delay on that. This here is a loser letter. And it goes into great detail. And it just says basically here, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for submitting your bid for this opportunity and explain the recent decision regarding our client's future transportation needs. The process has been completed and a fair and impartial analysis has been conducted based on your proposed pricing and services offers. As you are aware, changes in the transportation requirements have resulted in the continuing to uncover new greatest efficiency for our client. These improvements often are cost related and sometimes they're service related. While we have been very satisfied with your service to our company, this service cannot be offset by the price difference. La 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 la. So we get into that because it's important, because it shows that you cared to the carrier. You know, especially if they won the lane. Be nice enough. You know, they took the time out, their pricing managers took the time out in order to submit their bids for the specific lanes. Be nice enough to share, you know, to do the same thing to them. Take the time out of your busy day and say thank you. What does that tell the carriers? That, hey, you know what? There'll be another time. We will keep you in the loop. There'll be more opportunities for you, and they'll appreciate that. They're going to remember that stuff. It's the stuff that you do that others don't that they remember.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, that's I couldn't have said it better myself. So anyway, so Jeff, just out of curiosity, you know, you and I have a little varying thoughts on RFP schedules or our RFP frequency. What do you tell your clients is a good timeline for an RFP? Is it quarterly? Is it semi-annually? Is it what?
I tell them straight out. Now, all my stuff is contracts. We sign contracts with them for pricing, but they're not time deficit. Okay. And as I said earlier, hey, Mr. Customer, thank you for awarding us these lanes. However, this is what we're going to do. And now I justify my reasoning. I'll say, you know what? We're not going to lock this in for half a year or a year. It's just a volatile market. We don't know where it's going to go. I don't want you to lose money. I don't want to lose money. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the market closely, monitor it, and then we're going to have another discussion in several weeks. Let's reconvene in maybe 10 to 12 weeks, see what the market is doing. If we need to adjust our pricing, we'll do that in order to meet your needs, because it's telling them that you want to partner with them, that you're not in for the short run, you're in for the long run, that you're willing, to work with them and vice versa, in hopes that they will also work with you. You know, right. Some service providers are very steadfast and don't want to, I wouldn't say take a hit, but reduce their cost, still keep their margins pretty good, especially on the broker side, um, to keep them afloat. Because let's face it, John, I mean, we've been in business for a long time. We don't do this stuff for free, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You're not going to go to work and expect to stay there hours on end, or if they're hurting, they're going to say, John, you need to take a $20 an hour cut. I mean, that's no. You work because, and you charge based on your experience and your knowledge. That's value add right there. That's stuff that you don't want to devalue. If you devalue it once, they'll expect you to do it again and again and again and again. I paid my price, you paid your price. Let's get paid for what we know.
Exactly. Now you got me choked up.
I got a tickle in my throat. This is live, folks. It happens,
Yeah.
The old guys choking it up.
I'm just glad I was able to get out of bed this morning.
Yeah, every day I wake up, I'm like, thank you for another day. In the wonderful field that I've loved for 44 years.
Any day on this side of the ground is a good day.
Oh yeah. But it's important, John, when you're talking about RFPs, RFIs, RFQs, how to do them right, how to keep your incumbent carriers happy, how to build those relationships with the new carriers that you bring on, how to keep them fed throughout the year, to keep their interest high, how to communicate with them, whether good or bad, how to keep those channels of communication open, how to bring them into the inner circle that I spoke about having them sit with you at the oak table with the sales and operations departments, so that they have a good feel of what's to come. It could be even like those superseded parts, new parts coming in. I mean, and you also talk about we should do a show on the claims as well, because claims costs per pound dollar by product level detail. I mean, there's so much other stuff that you need to discuss with that in order to reduce your cost, which has to do with this too, and that's built into the contract and the transportation. And when you're doing RFPs and signing all these other kind of things, I mean, that's definitely in the weeds, for indemnification and per occurrence causes and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, even as we kind of touched on this today, taking the right steps to prevent claims in the first place.
Yes,
because claims are one of my favoriteest things to do in this industry. I love them to death. I'm being extremely facetious because they're just such a pain in my ass.
Well, you know what? Just real quick, and we'll give the folks out there, the audience, a little taste of what's to come. But and this is not an exaggeration. When I was at Ford Motor Company, we had black shipments, those like A-frames and those kind of black stuff that got wrapped in paper and everything. We had over 150 claims a day.
Ooh. You had a whole department, a whole team of people processing.
I had the best claims administrator, and that's when it comes down to concealed damage concession negotiations that I was great at, and it's all revenue leverage for sure that enabled me to do that. But there's a lot of different things that encompass how to reduce claims and manage it well in order to cut costs. Again, I'm here to cut costs. I'm here to make money. You're here to make money. You're there to cut costs for your company. I'm here to save you stress, take shit off your table in order to make your life better. That's the whole thing. And when two people have the same goal and objective, a lot of shit gets completed and done
That's
and
exactly
done
right.
right. And that's what it's all about. But I think that's a great idea for the next one, if not next week, the week after that. But to touch base on that, how to mitigate, reduce, or eliminate claims. I mean, that's
That's a good topic.
that's that's a great topic,
That-
because you and I just love it so much. That's why we want to talk about it.
we always talk about stuff I love.
But no, but hey, John, it was a great conversation today, as always. I love doing this. If we're in this not for ourselves, it's not ego driven, but the thing is we want to share that knowledge and experience with those who are watching this show. That even if one person takes what we say, implements it, and gets something in return from it, we've done our job.
That's exactly right.
There's a lot of people that will agree and disagree with our assumptions and our options and solutions. Fine, that's okay. But I know it worked for me. It worked for you. It works for us, and that's what counts.
That's exactly right.
So, John, until next week, everyone, thank you so much for watching this Old Doghouse Logistics podcast. We'll be back next week, which is the 20th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you soon.
Peace.